Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, back where he belongs. The special one, he's off to a winning start with his new Tottenham team. The sack race, it's on. Who's first for the chop? Pellegrini, Silva, Emery or Quique Sanchez-Flores. And Liverpool, they're still 8 points clear of Leicester. They felt the benefit of VAR in their 2-1 win at Crystal Palace yesterday. Combing over all the big decisions this morning, Martin Samuel, he's the chief sports writer at the Daily Mail. Paul Hayward is the chief sports writer at The Telegraph. Steve Bates is chief football writer with The People. Morning, guys. Good to see you. Thanks very much for coming down, Steve, because you're at Manchester City as well last night. Late night drive for you. Good to see you this morning. Don't forget, you can tweet the show. Martin reads them all at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. OK, let's have a look at the papers then. The Observer, there is a theme, of course, in the Sunday papers today. He is the happy one. He's back. He's back with a win at West Ham yesterday with his Tottenham side. Paul was there to watch that. We're coming straight onto it this morning. As you'd expect, happiness is back at Spurs. He is the big noise again, Mourinho. He's back in the Premier League and the volume was pumped up, turned up in the Chelsea Tottenham dressing room yesterday with that 3-2 victory at West Ham. It's the first time, he said, those players had the boombox on for 11 months since their last Premier League away win. Not all good news. You'll be hearing a lot more from this man as the season progresses. Not just Ollie Holt, but Mourinho. And it's damning stuff from Ollie. It's the return of football's #1 narcissist. The intro that Jose Mourinho is soiled goods, and it doesn't get any better reading from Mourinho beyond that. David Walsh in the Sunday Times, his column this morning. Mourinho returns. He's going to be less abrasive, but can he show more humility? He certainly did yesterday after the win yesterday at the London Stadium. Back of the Sun this morning, who's going to get the sack first? The flop trio face the music, Pellegrini, Silva and Unai Emery. I'm including Quique Sanchez-Flores to make that 4 at Watford with their defeat. Another defeat for them yesterday. Sun's goals pull out Aguero, the agony. Manchester City did win. They beat Chelsea yesterday, but Aguero limping off during that victory late on yesterday. Events at the Coliseum, the Sunday People's football pull-out, hold firm. Firmino leaves it late yesterday for Liverpool, but they did win a controversial win, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, his team, Manchester United in action this afternoon at Bramwell Lane against Sheffield United. All alone, he's talking about the January transfer window. He says Manchester United may not spend big, may not splash the cash in January. They might bring in some loan signings. We'll talk about that game in part 5 of today's programme. But as you'd expect, let's start with events in the week, Paul, because you were there at the London Stadium. Did what you did, having written about Mourinho's return at the start of the week and all the good work that Pochettino has done at Tottenham, did anything you saw yesterday change your opinion in any shape or form about the return of Mourinho to the Premier League, but the decision to bring him into Tottenham? No,
I mean, I think what had happened at Spurs was that the lights had gone out in the team. Very large number of players had disengaged a bit, were underachieving. So Mourinho's first job is quite simple, is to turn the lights back on and to get those players who are underperforming and underachieving enthused again, engaged again, positive again, optimistic again. And that, for a manager of his calibre, is a relatively straightforward job. That you saw the first signs of it working yesterday. He set the team up in a 4-2-3-1. The 4 attacking players were given a lot of licence to go and play, and they did all play. Dele Alli looked transformed. Lucas Moura got a start, which I thought was interesting. And those 4 front players ripped apart a pretty abject West Ham team. So West Ham were sent from the gods, really, to give Mourinho a chance to get the team playing and comfortable again. And I think the thing he did with Dele Alli was very clever and very interesting, because what he was saying when he said, you know, are you Dele or Dele's brother? I think he was sending a message to all the players there and saying, I'm starting with him because he's the biggest underachiever and I'm coming for the rest of you later.
Yeah. Well, it certainly succeeded, but there were some other, you mentioned more, Eric Dier as well, brought him straight back into the side. Couldn't win a place in the Tottenham team. Under Pochettino this season.
No.
But Mourinho put him in his preferred position. That's where he plays. And clearly he's a player that he's going to be looking to as one of his key men, a lieutenant on the field.
Yeah, I personally don't think Eric Dier will survive in that position, because I think he's a bit too ponderous. I think he'll end up going back to centre-back. And I think Mourinho has given him a vote of confidence by starting him in that position, but I think he'll find a better player to play alongside Harry Winks, who I think is excellent. Defensively, he's going to need to do a lot of work on them. I think if he's going to get them into the top 4, that will probably be the next stage. but initially those players looked quite happy to have him and to give him a chance and see how it works out. Again, the issue is going to be when Daniel Levy says no to him 10 times in a row. If he does say no 10 times in a row, for example, if Mourinho wants to get a player out of the club, if Daniel Levy says no, if Mourinho says he wants to get a player into the club and Daniel Levy says we're not paying that price for him. But that's a long way down the road. The first stage of it is to get the team winning again and get them into the top 4.
Yeah. Did Daniel Levy have to do this?
Did he have to?
Did he have to sack? First, did he have to sack Pochettino?
Yeah, I think he had to make it. It was irretrievable by the end of that relationship. Nothing seemed to make Pochettino happy by the end. He reminded me, in possibly a gentler way, of Mourinho at the end at Manchester United, where whatever happened, he was still finding the negative in the situation. You know, the stadium, they've broken the transfer record 2 or 3 times. I'm not saying he's got every player, but that's always been the problem for managers with Daniel Levy. And let's not forget, it's not just Daniel Levy. There's a fellow on the end of the phone line as well, Joe Lewis. So you know, it's not just Daniel Levy.
You wouldn't underestimate his influence, would you?
No.
Or you shouldn't.
Oh, no, you certainly shouldn't. And I think if the last... When you're in the Champions League final and the week before it all becomes about whether you're going to stay, whether you're going to go, Champions League semi-final, this amazing result against Ajax, and the narrative was all about Pochettino and his future, and you can say... It was brinkmanship to get the players he wanted, but ultimately it undermined the club, and ultimately the results in the last year are not the results you would get from that squad. The Champions League final notwithstanding, if you look at their domestic results, that's the first time they've beaten a team that is in the current Premier League away from home since December the 23rd last year, Everton. That was their last time they won away.
So they've got to be in the Premier League.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those results are not the results of a... When you look at that 1 to 11, I can appreciate that it's not perfect, but you wouldn't swap. I reckon there's 18 out of the 20 teams, 17 out of the 20 teams that would not swap the Tottenham's first team.
No.
So, in the end... if nothing seems to improve that situation, you've got to change it. It's great, and he will go to another club, and he'll be a great manager at that other club. But I don't think he was going to be a great manager at Tottenham because the drift had been too great, and the breakdown in the relationship had been too great.
On that basis, Steve, is it a vindictive appointment?
A vindictive appointment in what way?
Because Pochettino, 5.5 years at Tottenham, didn't win a trophy. Martin said the relationship had gone so far, the distance between Pochettino and Daniel Levy was so wide, it was irretrievable. So, OK, you're out, and with this squad of players, we'll get the guy who guarantees trophies. That's pretty vindictive if that's what he goes and does.
Or it's sensible. Because that's the missing ingredient, wasn't it? All the way along with Pochettino, whatever was levelled at him, you've won nothing was always the key issue. I think when you're managing, Tottenham see themselves as a top 4 club, and they've been the most consistent, probably top 4 club over the last 3, 4, 5 years. But they've won nothing. You know, Jose Mourinho in his first season at Manchester United, his first year, won 3 trophies. If you count the Community Shield, he did. They won 3 trophies.
Ollie doesn't in his piece this morning, by the way. He definitely doesn't count the Community Shield.
Well, most managers do, don't they?
Yeah.
And why not? You know, it is a trophy. You can only actually win as an English football. Well, in English football, you can only actually win. Is it 6 trophies? Champions League, Premier League, 2 cups, and Community Shield, 5. So Jose in his first season with United won 2 of those. Now, with that team that Tottenham have had over the last 3 years, you know for sure that Jose Mourinho would have won a trophy with that team.
You think so? I mean, there was a Liverpool-Man City the other day. I'm told, I was at the match, but someone said to me, he got asked about if Liverpool win today and they go 9 points clear or whatever, and they said, you know, is the league over? Now, I'm sure he didn't quite say it like this, but it was literally, well, if I am 9 points clear in November, that's it, you know. That's it done, basically.
That,
you know.
Mourinho said that.
Yeah.
He did say that. He did say, I'm 9 points clear, I'm gone.
I'm gone, yeah.
Shut the door, see you later. See you next season.
See you
go
next
again.
season.
I mean, I don't think we should sort of understate it. It's a rational, pragmatic thing to do, but we shouldn't understate the degree to which Tottenham have just ripped everything up, ripped their identity up and said, that's 5 years, forget about it, it's not working, we're going to do something completely different. And this is a radical departure for Spurs to appoint Mourinho as manager after all the groundwork they've been doing to build a particular, well,
but do you
belief in
think they're
youth.
saying it's not working? Or do you think... I think they're actually saying it is working, but we just want someone else to direct it.
Yeah, I mean, we could go through the two basic tenets, which are, you know, belief in youth and then style of play. I don't think we'll probably get carried away with this idea that Pochettino was a romantic and it was all about, you know, swashbuckling football. He was a pretty serious coach on top of that.
Yeah.
But I think the youth development is a serious issue. That's Tottenham saying, well, actually, we're going to just put that away for a while and maybe bring it back in a couple of years because Mourinho is not going, particularly where they are in the table, he's not going to be particularly interested in the academy, is he, for a while? And I think that the trouble is with you know, telling the world that you've got this ethos is if you suddenly depart from this ethos, people are going to say, well, you're not the same club anymore. You're not. This isn't Tottenham Hotspur anymore. It's become a more of a calculating, you know, realistic kind of club without all the romance. But
I think it did need a reset at Tottenham. I think it needed I think it needed a refresh because after the Champions League final, which they did really brilliant to go, then didn't really kind of turn up in the Champions League final in Madrid as you would expect a Tottenham side to have done. But they got there, and that was a huge step forward. But I think after that, it needed a reboot, and it didn't seem as though it happened. And then you've gone from a Champions League final to 14th place in the Premier League. You know, you can't justify that. No matter what manager you are, you cannot justify that kind of drop-off in performance. And I think, you know, whether the players weren't listening to Pochettino anymore, whether he was fighting his own battles and taking his eye off the ball, whether Levy was unwilling to sort of back Pochettino in the transfer market to a really big degree, because that's what it now takes. It's going to be really interesting now to see what kind of a wish list of players Jose Mourinho will be giving to Daniel Levy and what Daniel Levy thinks about those players, because that was the problem at Manchester United, and that's why it all unravelled at the end, because the players he wanted to sign were not the players that Manchester United wanted to sign. They were too old, the profile wasn't right for the club, and that's why it ended. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether Levy buys in to what Mourinho wants now to take the club forward.
The other thing that I think is different with Mourinho at Tottenham, as opposed to any job he's ever had in English football, certainly, and thinking about it, possibly Inter Milan would be the exception, but anyway, and some of his very early jobs in Portugal is this. I take your point about youth, because there's absolutely no evidence really that he's a you know, he would do, say, what Pochettino did or what Lampard is doing, albeit by necessity at the moment. But at the same time, his other two jobs in England have been jobs at which, unless you win the league, you've failed. Chelsea, unless you win the league, you get sacked. I mean, it's altered a little bit now, but Sarri still went after 1 year, Europa League, but still went. And Chelsea managers do tend to get the sack if they don't win the league unless there's special circumstances. Manchester United the same. We all know what the aim is for Manchester United, and it's only because they've fallen so far and so unexpectedly that it's been revised a little bit to become this work in process. After Ferguson left, initially it was the next managers were expected to win the league. Mourinho was expected to win the league. This is the first job he's had in England where if you don't win the league at Tottenham, well, it's not exactly a disaster because they haven't won the league since 1961. So it should be an ambition, but that's what he has got at Tottenham. Now, whether he takes it up or not, he has got the freedom he's got a little bit more wriggle room than he had at his previous jobs. He's got a little bit more wriggle room than he had at Real Madrid and at Porto, where I would say you expected to win the league. You're not expected to win the Champions League. But I think he's got a little bit more wriggle room here. I don't know. I don't know what you're going to see, but...
Well, between now and May, as I said earlier, it's quite straightforward, isn't it? You can get them from 14th to 4th or 3rd or 4th. That's not going to be easy, though, because, Chelsea and Leicester are really decent sides, and they're not going to go anywhere as far as I can see. So
the interesting element is now that is now being put forward is, can he change? Can we see a different Jose Mourinho?
If he's the ultimate trophy hunter and serial winner, why would he change?
Well,
because if he changes, you may not get the trophies. Yeah,
I mean, it was interesting in his kind of unveiling at Tottenham. He was talking about he's made mistakes and he won't make those same mistakes again. He'll make different mistakes. Listen, I don't think Jose Mourinho can change. He has a formula, a winning, which has served him absolutely brilliantly. I mean, his CV is amazing. His CV is still amazing. OK, he's had a difficult sort of 2 or 3, 4 years, but his CV is still amazing and stands comparison with any other manager in the game today, in my opinion.
Don't you think his problem has become managing upwards, basically? He can always manage downwards. He could manage any team. He's brilliant. But there's a pattern in his career latterly of him struggling with the people above him. So Real Madrid, Manchester United and Chelsea, that's where he hits problems. The conflicts come with, often with individual players, but mostly with chief executives and owners, So the thing we're all looking for is whether he can get on with the people who own and run Tottenham Hotspur, because in his past 3 jobs, he hasn't done that.
I think the game's changed, hasn't it? The game's changed, though, from when he was first at Chelsea. It's so much more competitive now. And you can see by looking at the Premier League table today that there are sort of teams up there that you would never have thought possible because the playing field's levelled out a lot. And his ability to win the Premier League is not as kind of easy and guaranteed as it perhaps was when he had Abramovich's money in the first place.
And do you not think as well that, as you're saying there, Paul, but he's an old-fashioned manager, and I think that's why he struggles with it, because he quite likes...
He wants control.
He wants what Fergie had. He wants to be able to say, right, this is what we do, and this is how we do it, and I'll tell you, I'm the guy that knows about the football, and I'll tell you about the football. And that's not how it is anymore. You've got somebody else telling you about the football, and then you've got to try and make their vision work for you, which I think Benitez has the same problem a lot of the time. They want to be a manager from 25 years ago, basically, when you could actually write what I say goes.
Yeah.
And it's not like that.
You can read all about that, because Benitez has done an interview with Rob Draper in the Mail on Sunday this morning, which you can read all about. OK, from one manager who got the sack to the sack race, who's going first? Is it Pellegrini, Silva, Unai, Emery? Quique Sanchez-Flores will tell you next. He's coming next. Welcome back. OK, a trio of flops facing the music back of the Sun this morning. Who's going to get the sack first? Is Pellegrini, Unai Emery at Arsenal drew 2-2 with Southampton yesterday. Marco Silva, I've added a fourth in there. Quique Sanchez-Flores beaten 3-0 at home by Burnley yesterday. It's not turning out the way that Watford or Sanchez-Flores hoped it would. Of the 4, because I've introduced a 4th name there, Steve, or you could choose another one if you wish. But who is the most vulnerable of those managers?
I'd say it's the one you've just thrown in at the end there, Flores. I mean, given Watford's record of sacking managers and sort of it's a revolving door, isn't it, there at Vicarage Road?
They don't hesitate, do they?
They don't hesitate, and I would think he would be under serious problems. When you're losing, no disrespect to Burnley, who are an absolutely fantastic, well-drilled, established Premier League club, when you're losing 3-0 at home to them, then, alarm bells are ringing, aren't they? I think... I just said the 1-1 game this season. That's just not good enough. But I think what it's showing with Pellegrini, Emery and Marco Silva, Silva appears to be under constant game-by-game pressure. They win one, it's off. They lose one, it's back on. Pellegrini, sort of things seem to be just kind of unravelling for him there. Spent a fair bit of money in the summer as well. Emery, I'm not so sure there's a real sort of desire by Arsenal to sack him just yet.
There is by Arsenal fans.
By Arsenal fans, there is, but I mean,
it's always a desire.
They wanted Wenger out for years, didn't they? But I mean, listen, I would say Flores would be the one under serious threat, and then probably after that, Marco Silva, because the Everton he was meant to be the saviour at Everton after Allardyce. Sam did a really good job there, kept them up. OK, he wasn't perhaps the perfect fit for them going forward, but Silva was meant to be that man, and they got engaged in, I think, you know, a row with Watford that went to Premier League and tribunals. I think has it been sorted yet? I don't think it has.
Sure, I think
that is still ongoing. And I mean, they were putting their hat on him as the man that was going to lead them into the promised land, and it's just not worked out. I mean, they've lost at home to Sheffield United this season. They're not making strides forward, and I would imagine that him and Flores are the two that are really under pressure.
Why doesn't it work out, Paul? Because clubs, they go to such incredible lengths to appoint the managers. I mean, I can remember being at Arsenal for Unai Emery's press conference, and Ivan Gazidis, who departed a couple of months later for Milan, admittedly, but he talked about the recruitment process and how thorough it had been, and there was no effectively saying there is no stone unturned in the appointment of this manager, which every club would pretty much say. No one would say, "Oh yeah, we'll get this guy and we'll give him a go," which it looks like at the moment. But they go to enormous lengths to hire these guys. But why doesn't it work?
Well, I think the pendulum might swing back the other way, away from this kind of technocratic approach where it's all about data and analysis, and the guy turns up with an impressive PowerPoint presentation, as Emery presumably did. I think there was a fashion for that. You know, you needed to find this guy who was a fabulous, you know, analyst and a scientist.
And that's what Mourinho famously did in 2004, wasn't it? The presentation to Abramovich was the PowerPoint, and that sort of set a trend.
But Mourinho has the other thing to go with it, which is the personality and the man management skills and the intuitive sense of what coaching and management really is. Now, Emery, I was watching the Arsenal highlights, and I was actually disturbed by Arsenal have worried you plenty of times and dismayed you plenty of times, but I was actually disturbed watching that game because Southampton should have buried them. The body language of the Arsenal players was appalling. They're no further forward than they were at the end of the Wenger era. And at the end of the game, Emery came in and onto television and he's not very easy to follow, is he, when he's talking after a game? But all he talked about was analyse. I'll analyse with the players. I'll analyse with my coaching staff. And I was thinking, sorry, the time for analysis has passed. You know, you've got to do something to this team to make a difference, to make it better. And I was just listening to him thinking, you know, in the end, you have to have more than that. You have to have more than analysis and data and you know, and charts. You need to have what the top managers have, which is a kind of proper, instinctive, intuitive way of managing people and knowledge of how to manage people to get the best out of them. And some of these coaches just don't have that.
What about Pellegrini as well at West Ham? It was savage at 3-0. It was savage yesterday, but of course the team got a couple of goals back, and the result looks a little bit more respectable.
You can with West Ham, it's somewhat more understandable. They have replaced the best goalkeeper I've ever seen down at West Ham with the worst goalkeeper I've ever seen down at West Ham, and if you do that, if you've got a goalkeeper who punches it into his own net, you're going to find it hard to win matches. And at the moment, Roberto is good for 1 or 2 goals a game for the opposition, and has been for about a month or so now. And when he came into the team, they were 1 place off the top 4, and they're now 2 places off the bottom 3. And all that's changed really is the goalkeeper. So that's a bottom line problem. But quite clearly, it's not just that, because the defence have lost its way, and you've got, you know, a guy like Anderson who's a very good player, but doesn't seem particularly interested in physical contact. You know, everything's on Declan Rice and Mark Noble to trying to put out fires all over the pitch yesterday. I mean, I don't know what Roy Keane is saying about the man lacking football intelligence, because there was a couple of tackles that Declan Rice put in yesterday that you know, showed a real understanding of what was going wrong, and he nipped across and killed it. Otherwise, they could have been in far greater trouble. It's a difficult thing, because Pellegrini won the league at Man City and probably didn't get the credit he deserved for that. I think they won 2 trophies in his first season. First South American coach to win the Premier League.
Champions League semi-final.
Champions League semi-final. Having said that, West Ham got him back from China. I think you can make a judgment about anyone who's taking the money from China about where they are in their career, and you're probably not at the bit where you're champing at the bit to get up it's where you go for the money, and that's where they got him from. So there's a sense of drift there. Mm-hmm. There was, and when you see Pellegrini, he doesn't look like the sort of guy that is going to address it. And all of those clubs and all of those managers you mentioned, we don't appoint from the Championship anymore. Mm-hmm. The second tier of English football is no longer seen as, well, if you do well there, you get a job in the first tier of English football, which is how Benitez began in the Spanish league or whatever. He did well in second tier football, and then he got the chance, and then he did well with smaller clubs in the La Liga, and then he got the big jobs. We don't do that anymore. Chris Wilder, unless Chris Wilder gets Sheffield United into the Premier League, Chris Wilder would be a Championship manager for the rest of his life.
Could go fifth today.
He could go fifth today.
And similarly, I mean, when the Pochettino-Mourinho thing was being discussed, I heard this phrase several times, well, they could have appointed an Eddie Howe type. And I was saying, so he's a type.
Eddie Howe.
Poor old Eddie Howe. He's a type.
It's a type, yeah.
What does that mean? Does it mean that he's not...
There's a million of them.
Yeah, he's not qualified to get a good job because he's an Eddie Howe type?
But you look at when Everton recruited Marco Silva. If you examine Marco Silva's track record to that point, why would you be so obsessed with, falling out with Watford, getting yourself in a tangle with the Premier League and in front of a tribunal because you're poaching? Why would you do that? Because his track record does not scream at you that this is the man that's going to lead you to the promised land. And as Martin's just said there's so many other managers that just get bypassed because they don't have a foreign name.
It's amazing how conflicting... I've had conflicting reports that at Watford on the training ground that he's one of the best coaches that players have worked under.
Silva,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then people are playing with the training ground.
Yeah, but at Everton, completely different story, where I'm told they're, forget it. Not particularly impressive.
What do they mean by one of the best coaches? I mean, were we talking training ground drills, organisation, tactics boards, charts, stats analysis? Are we only talking about that, or are they only talking about that? Are they also talking about force of personality? And as I said earlier, getting people going, getting people wanting to play and happy in themselves.
Yeah, I guess people talk about the main bulk of the work is out on the grass, right? Is what they do.
Sure.
Is what they do with the players out on the pitch.
But you look at say Frank Lampard, who I think everyone around the table will say has done a very good job at Chelsea so far. His experience was in the Championship. He did a good job at Derby. Yeah. He went off and he became the coach of Derby, and he did a good job at Derby. And because of his history with Chelsea finally took a chance on an English manager, who hadn't got, who'd done a good job in the Championship.
But was that because of their situation with the transfer ban?
Exactly,
and
as well.
The fact that if that transfer ban hadn't been in place, Martin, that's what I'm saying.
Is Frank Lampard manager at Chelsea?
Quite probably not.
But you look at it, and that's what I don't understand. You see these guys come into the Premier League from the Championship, young English managers, and a lot of them do a very good job.
Sean Dyche.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
unless you get in there yourself, you don't get the job.
With Burnley.
No.
Unless you actually get yourself promoted.
You have to take the team with you, don't you?
Yeah, you take the team with you, and I'm a Premier League manager. Yeah. If you waited for someone to actually look at you and go, actually, see that what that fella's done at Sheffield United. Even if they don't get up this season, what a fantastic job he's done with Sheffield United. But no one was ever going to do that. No. If Chris Wilder doesn't get Sheffield into the Premier League, no one would have thought of him. No. It's ridiculous.
Who can retrieve? Is any of these four capable of retrieving the situation they find themselves in?
I don't think so. Particularly the teams where I always think it's already over is where you can see the team stop running. The players have stopped playing, and the players have stopped pressing.
They start hiding
and running. Yeah. They start hiding, and West Ham are a classic example yesterday. Nobody taking any responsibility for anything. Everybody floating around and thinking as if they're waiting for something to happen, i.e., the manager to lose his job. And
Mikel Antonio yesterday came on, didn't he?
Antonio was the only thing
transformed that game for West Ham.
And Mark Noble was superb. He didn't stop playing for a single second, Mark Noble. What a pro.
He was also very honest after the game, wasn't he?
Completely,
I always
yeah.
admire his honesty.
I noticed that, yeah. But in general, when you look at those teams where that has happened, you say, is the manager going to turn that round? Is he going to get those players back and get them running again and pressing again and trying again? How often does that happen? It's very rare.
Yeah. So
they don't look like a team. West Ham do not look like a team that are going to be in trouble when they get into the dressing room. You know, or on training on Monday. They don't look like a team that thinks it's going to get its fortune told.
Same with Arsenal, really. I mean, Arsenal are facing, for me, a similar problem that Manchester United faced when, at the end of the Ferguson era, you know, it's the end of the Wenger era, they've gone to a guy that they thought was going to be the answer, take them in a different direction and build the club back up again. It's not happening. It's not happening. And I look at Emery, and it doesn't. If I'm a player, it doesn't look as though it's really good fun to play under Unai Emery.
That's very intense.
And it should be, because they've got the goals. They've got 40-odd goals up front.
Absolutely, but it just, you know, he doesn't inspire me, really, looking at him.
There was that amazing stat where, you know, his first 50 games, he's got fewer points than Wenger had in his last 50 games. Only by one, but it's still fewer points. And so if you're not adding to the points tally and you're not getting them up the table, you say, well, what difference have you made? Yeah. Are they playing any better? Are they any harder to beat? No.
I think the most amazing statistic about Emery and in this fantastic analysis that these various geniuses at Arsenal did, I can't understand how this one never came up, was that in his final season at Sevilla, they didn't win a single game away from home all season. Not one. And qualified for the Champions League because they won the Europa League. So it's fantastic. But if you look at their domestic results, and you think of that Sevilla team, I think they won it 3 years on the term. But how do you go their whole season? You don't win an away game.
And then land an Arsenal job.
And then someone comes in and goes, I tell you what, we've looked at all of his numbers, he's fantastic, this guy. And no one went, did you see the away games?
Yeah.
Who was in charge of looking at the away games?
But success...
technical committee.
I think I know what you'd say to this, Martin, but successful at Paris Saint-Germain.
And he did win 3 Europa League.
Look, I'm not doubting that he's a that there is a CV there. I'm just thinking that final season at Sevilla, that's a troubling statistic. That you've got a team as good as that, and for some reason you couldn't get them going week in, week out in the league. I don't understand it. He did win the league at Paris Saint-Germain, that's very true.
He did. A few people have won the league at Paris Saint-Germain.
It's very hard not to win.
Yeah, it's harder to lose.
In its modern, shall we just say, in its modern form.
OK. We're going to talk about some football after the break. We'll talk about Liverpool. Another win for them yesterday. Controversial VAR decision at the Coliseum, but they did win 2-1. More on that game is coming next. Welcome back. With us this morning, Martin Samuel, Paul Hayward and Steve Bates. Let's just quickly remind you what's in the papers this morning. There is a theme, the Observer front page of their sports section is the happy one, Mourinho. He's back in charge of Tottenham, winning 3-2 yesterday at the London Stadium. Paul was there for that game. We've just been talking about him. Jose pumping up the volume. He was talking about the dressing room, a happy dressing room at Tottenham after that victory. They finally had their boombox on, their first away win in the Premier League for 11 months. Not all good news, though, not all good reading from Mourinho this morning. Ollie Holt's column this morning, the return of football's #1 narcissists. Those two just don't seem to get along. Sam Wallace talking about the future of Mauricio Pochettino's got to be ready to shoot down the big egos at the very pinnacle of the sport. What next for him? Linked with Bayern Munich, of course, over the weekend, Barcelona and Real Madrid. Arsenal fans seem to want him too. The Sunday People's Football pull-out, hold firm. We'll come on to this game now. Liverpool winning yesterday at Crystal Palace. It was a hard-fought win. They had to dog it out. And Mark Halsey, the VAR decision, Paul, which I know you've seen, even though the London Stadium yesterday, which is Jordan Ayew making contact with Dejan Lovren. Goal ruled out. Mark Halsey, former referee, of course, asking the question, was Kevin Friend, was the original decision a clear error? And he says the answer to that was no. Was there enough contact? No. The goal should have stood, in his opinion. Do you agree?
I do. I think there was a hand on Lovren from Jordan Ayew, but you couldn't see straight away that it was strong enough to have pushed him over, and Lovren goes down very theatrically. It was a nudge, a push, slight push, but VAR. I mean, That is not a clear and obvious error because you couldn't be sure that there was enough force of contact for it to be a penalty to justify Lovren's tumble. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, well, because you can't be sure, you have to let the goal stand, you know. Instead, wind it back, decide that Lovren's been shoved over in the box, therefore it's no penalty. Crystal Palace are deprived of a goal by James Tompkins. And I don't know whether you want to get back onto VAR, but it's a classic example of VAR adjudicating where there has been no clear and obvious error.
Well, I think while we're on that subject, we'll get back to Liverpool and their performance in a moment, because you were at Manchester City for the, I'd say, Raheem Sterling. I think even the Premier League's official email yesterday said Raheem Sterling scored. Well, he hasn't scored, has he?
No.
Because it's disallowed for offside.
Yeah, we were still struggling to know what part of his anatomy was offside.
So who would argue with that? If that goal was given, who would have argued with it?
Well, nobody.
Would anybody have? Would you have found any dissenters?
Nobody. Chelsea certainly weren't claiming that it was offside or looked offside, or nobody in that stadium was. And this is what's sucking the life out of Premier League football at the minute, because fans are reticent to celebrate a goal because they don't know whether it's every goal's checked these days. They don't know whether it's going to be pulled back. But that was so clearly so marginal that it was not clear and obvious. And let's just give the striker the benefit of the doubt there. You know, okay, the referees might say if he's a hair's breadth offside, he's offside. But I think this is
what we're going to see is strikers who are going to have to give 2-3 yards.
Yeah.
2 or 3 yards. You can't play on the shoulder. I mean, Vardy plays on the shoulder of defenders.
One of the strongest advocates of advantage to the attacking team, and it always amazed me. It was hugely in favour of it. Was George Graham, the absolute king of pushing up in a line, offside trap, squeeze it in. George always said, if you get it wrong and a guy's half an inch offside, no one's ever got any sympathy for the team playing the offside trap. No one's ever got any sympathy for the defensive team. Everyone's sympathy is with the forward. So, benefit the forward. So give the forward the benefit of the doubt. He was always an advocate of that. And what is happening now is it's completely flipped on its head. A defender can handle it and it's not a penalty, but if the forward handles it, it disallows the goal.
Yep.
All of the stuff where you're measuring things in margins. The offside rules were written in 1866. Do you think they were talking about armpits being offside or your big toe was offside? They were talking about an offside you could see. Yeah. You know, there was a goal scored. Where was the goal scored at the weekend I saw? And it was, you know, and it would look too good to be true, and it was. I think it might have been West Ham.
Was it the Declan Rice
the far post
offside?
So at the time, you're looking at that and thinking, cool, that looks offside. I mean, Lino hasn't given it, but that looks offside. And sure enough, VAR...
Did you just say the Lino?
Yeah, Lino ain't giving it, but, you know...
Proper Sunday morning here.
Love it.
But going back to the Palace, going back to the Palace thing, though, you know, we're in danger of... I think if we're not careful, clubs will start coaching an insurance policy into moves like that. So a ball comes into the box and somebody looks for a bit of contact on the defensive side, throws themselves down as an insurance policy. So in case VAR looks at it, you can say, "Oh yeah, he was pushed over there." Yeah, I think clubs are going to start manipulating it now because it's so open to abuse.
I mean, how many times we've known this one for 20, 30 years, the centre forward where you back into the defender and fall forward, back in and fall forward.
VAR gives you a second go then.
And now VAR is going to make that's exactly what you need to start doing, back in and fall forward, back in and fall forward.
Yeah, and you can get a goal chalked off.
Yeah.
You know.
OK. Liverpool did win yesterday. If they they play Brighton next weekend. If they avoid defeat, it'll equal the 31-game unbeaten, their own 31-game unbeaten run, which stretches or goes back to 1988. But they had to grind out that win yesterday. Prettier at times, more aesthetic against, say, Man City a couple of weeks ago. But yesterday, first game back from an international break, and I think even Klopp accepted that at times this was a tough game for them to go and win.
That's what's so frightening about Liverpool to me. We know about their talent and ability, but they're relentless now. They're a machine, aren't they? And they do remind me of the 70s and 80s teams in the sense that they've got such a hard core and such a character, a winning character now. Whatever challenge you present them in a game, and Palace presented plenty of them yesterday because they were very good, weren't they? Liverpool came through it. Liverpool found a way around it. They found a way to get a late goal. They're just... You would hate to play Liverpool because they're always looking to get you, and you could tell that Klopp was particularly pleased with that result because he knew, they got out of there with a win, out of Selhurst Park with a win that they might not have got, and that's it's a cliche, but that's the sign of a title-winning team.
Yeah, it's interesting. Klopp saying he doesn't know about the records. He says he's not interested, which I accept. But would it play a part in his thinking? Or do you think it affects his thinking?
No.
But I say that because if you go back to the Invincibles, Sir Alex Ferguson always talks about the number of draws in that season that Arsenal had.
Too many draws.
But too many draws, yeah.
Too many draws.
But even Arsenal's players accept that point. We're not getting beaten today. Come what may, we are not getting beaten.
Yeah.
That was that became them as the run went on. That became their mentality. We might not win, but we're definitely not getting beaten.
Yeah, and Klopp for sure is just not interested in records. He just isn't. I've been in so many briefings with him where you've quizzed him on, even to the point where the finals he lost. He just wasn't interested in those. No. He wasn't interested in the record of those, and equally, he's not interested in how many wins they're racking up. And if they beat Brighton on Saturday, it'll mean the greatest ever start in a season for 80, whatever. He's not interested. He's just clearly he's a man in the moment. Just
absolutely
every single game is that is the most important. Records don't count. And of course, he's got a team who have just got the bit between the teeth, and people say, oh, you can't win the league in November or December. Well, you can.
Oh, you can.
You can. And this Liverpool team are looking like champions as every week goes by.
They are the one team in the league at the moment that said that it's clear they want to win it. There's an absolute conviction about it.
Team.
Yeah.
They're a bullying team in the best possible sense.
Oh yeah, they are, and they did that yesterday without Mo Salah. Who's the talisman often, but that's now shifting a bit. Sadio Mane now seems to be kind of their go-to man.
If they got an injury in the full-back positions, that might have an effect because they're so good. They're so good in those positions. But even then, there's just a relentlessness about them. They're the best set-up team in the country by a mile.
I think they have that. They have that kind of mentality that Ash has just mentioned there. That the Invincibles and all the great teams have. They just don't think they're going to get beaten. Yeah.
It's a brilliant put together team, isn't it? Basically.
And last year, people said their midfield is maybe just a slight half a level down from the back and the front of the team. But actually now the midfield's looking like one of their strongest assets because that's a really tough middle three, and they will bully you.
Yeah. Okay.
He's coached players. He's improved players. Jordan Henderson. You look at Jordan Henderson's passing range now compared to 3 or 4 years ago. He's a different player. Different player.
And his attitude yesterday was, I have to say, Martin, because I was at the game, but his attitude was exemplary because he realised very quickly that Liverpool were not going to win that game 2 or 3-0. It wasn't going to be comfortable. Yeah. And I'm not saying he was responsible, but he was certainly the driving force behind the mentality and the performance and the attitude of Liverpool's players. Just touch on Manchester City as well and Chelsea, because it was a big game last night. Pep's reaction and the 9 points difference, which we can talk endlessly about. Leicester are only 8 points behind the leaders at the moment, so we should give them credit too. But what is his mood? What is the temperature like at City at the moment?
Listen, he publicly he will not give up, neither with his players. But for sure that he knows that given the quality of that and the leadership at Liverpool, they're not gonna pull that back.
Mm-hmm. He needs favours, doesn't he?
Yeah, they're not gonna. And yesterday, case in point, Liverpool win those games. They win away at Palace. They win the tough games where you're thinking, as an opposition manager, they might drop a point there today. They just don't drop points, Liverpool. And I think Guardiola sees in Liverpool what he knows he had in his own team when they were at their very, very peak. I think City have dropped off this season. There's no doubt about it. They've dropped off. He's made some changes. He's brought some players in. They've had a key injury to Laporta. City don't look as kind of fluent and kind of deadly as they did yesterday. Raheem was off it. Was nowhere near it really. Bernardo Silva seems to have he's gone off the boil a bit. Aguero got an injury yesterday, which I think, judging by Guardiola's body language afterwards, he thinks that's going to be maybe a serious injury that will impact on them for a few weeks. So I think City's focus. He won't say it, he won't admit it, but I think City's focus has got to probably be on the Champions League this season.
What I'm fascinated by is the speculation about Pep's future at Manchester City. Why has that all of a sudden come into the news cycle?
I mean, he's at pains to point out that he's happy.
Pause there, Steve.
He's happy at City, but I think there's a feeling at City maybe that maybe this is the start of the end for him in terms of not maybe this season, but certainly probably next season. I think with Pep, you know, teams, players, dressing rooms have maybe a shelf life with him. He's such an intense guy, you know, working with him must be draining. You've got to be at your best every single minute.
But on that point, Fergie would refresh the dressing room, wouldn't he? I mean, you've covered enough. Yeah. You've covered enough United teams to know that he would 2 or 3 out, bring some new players in. Then of course you retain the power in the dressing room. And no one gets bored of that.
No. But City, of course, are having to contend now with companies gone. Silva's going at the end of the season. Aguero's coming to the end. You know, that kind of that core that was so good for them is kind of now dissolving. And he's got to find a way to regenerate them.
If you were City, you put Pochettino on a retainer. And that's your problem solved. Just put him on a retainer. Go, right, OK, you're our next manager. Might be this summer, might be the summer after. If you're prepared to wait...
I haven't seen him linked with... I've seen him linked with Barcelona.
You're our next
Manchester
manager.
United, Real Madrid,
because
Barcelona.
What you will also think is he comes as a pair. We get Poch, we get Harry Kane. Certainly if you're Manchester City and you're thinking money's no object, you know, we can do this. We're the one club in this country that could do that transfer and make that transfer work. You'd think, right, we get him, we get Harry Kane as well.
Is that Sunday supplement? Is that... Are you breaking
mate, I'm sitting there, I'm minding my own business. No. You know, I'm looking at all the nice scenery and everything, and I suddenly think, well, that would be a good idea. That's what I thought.
I've got to say, that felt like... I don't know.
Pochettino's the most powerful manager in the world at the moment, because I was thinking that what Manchester United should do is move Ole Gunnar Solskjaer upstairs and give him a proper job, technical director or whatever, and get Pochettino in.
It's not a proper job.
So, you know, the other thing about... Things work in mysterious ways as well, because as I shuffled the papers...
Yeah. His name came to the top and you suddenly thought, West Ham.
West Ham. Arsenal.
It's a sign.
Oh, Arsenal, mate. I thought that last week. If you was Arsenal, you'd walk across the road and say, look, you really want to take Daniel Levy off here? Come over here.
Shows how much the world has changed when Arsenal fans want a Tottenham manager.
Yeah, exactly. Terry Neal did it, I think, didn't he? Back in the...
George Graham as well.
But in all seriousness,
the other way,
City...
Last word, yeah.
Yeah, City do have to have an eye on the future, because they know Pep's not going to be around forever. Sure. They know, and they've got to, and you wouldn't put it past City to be planning right now for that moment.
For the future, yeah. OK, we'll see what comes to pass over the next few seasons. I'm sure we'll talk about it relentlessly until then, until that moment arrives. OK, next up, we're going to talk international football and England qualifying for the Euro 2023 games at Wembley next summer. We can all look forward to those. You're watching Sunday Supplement. Straight after us, you'll be watching Goals on Sunday. Let's find out who the guests are with Alex and Cammy. Cammy.
Good morning.
Morning. You good, Cammy?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. Feeling a little bit...
Dancing OK last night?
Dancing, yeah.
Ah, great stuff, great stuff. We've got a lot to go through today, and we've got a first for Goals on Sunday. We've got 2 Premier League strikers in Chris Wood and Ashley Barnes, but it's a first because they both scored the previous day. We've never had that before.
Never had it. And you know what that means? It's going to be a good show.
We'll see you then.
Guaranteed to be a good show with Cammy and Alex on the sofa this morning. OK, let's talk international football then. It feels like an awful long time ago with everything that's happened this week, with Pochettino being sacked, Jose coming back to manage in the Premier League. But England, of course, have qualified for Euro 2020 next summer. So reflections on last weekend, the performance, and also the vision for the future. Have we got the team? Has Gareth Southgate got the squad to compete, to get to the last four, to get to the final of this tournament?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we listen. You can't fault them for the qualifying campaign. We did what England have generally done over the last few years, and that's qualify at a canter. There's never any scares or kind of issues about, will we, won't we. England do qualify for tournaments. That's their strength. It's when they get there the problems begin. And listen, there's no doubt about it that I think England scored 37 goals in that qualifying campaign, which was far and above anybody else in any of the 104 groups that we started out with.
Which Martin's a fan of, yeah.
So that's not an issue. Neither is the midfield and the creativity or the defensive part of the midfield is good. The defence is obviously an issue, but people last weekend when they won in Kosovo were saying but it's not all kind of rosy because we have got these issues in defence, and we do have, but no team are perfect. I think England have got a really, really good team that have got a great chance, given that a big chunk of that tournament is on home soil. Gareth keeps focusing on the last 16 and the quarter-final games that England will face away from home, should they win their 3 Wembley qualifiers. And those are the issues he seems to be focusing on.
Huge incentive though, win them and you're back at Wembley.
You're back at Wembley for the semi and the final. I mean, massive opportunity, and one that I think England are capable of taking. I think England, there's a fear factor now with England. I think a lot of teams across Europe really respect and fear England because they know the damage they can do. When you score 37 goals in your qualifying games, it doesn't matter who against, you've got to score the goals. And, England have got a lethal strike force, and if everybody stays fit, which will obviously be the key issue, I think Gareth, having learnt lessons in the World Cup in Russia, I think England will have an absolutely great chance of reaching the semis.
He won't see his players for a long time, really, will he? He won't see them until March, and then the countdown will really be on. How will Southgate use that time between now and then, Paul? It can't, endless games, we know, because of course he'll be at Bramall Lane, I think, this afternoon to watch Sheffield United and Manchester United. But there's more to the job than that, particularly when Southgate's around. Yeah,
well, I don't think it'll be like the build-up to the Russia World Cup where he changed the style of play in the last 6 months, had a rethink very successfully. I don't think he needs to do that. I think he'll probably spend the next few months thinking about the defensive aspect, which doesn't worry me as much as it worries some people because... I think he's got good players. They haven't been defending particularly well recently, but that's solvable, I think, that problem. And, I was thinking about the Wembley factor. 3 years ago, I'd have said that would be potentially a hindrance because Wembley, I think some players had a mental block about playing at Wembley with all the expectation and the pressure and all the rest of it. One of Gareth Southgate's achievements, I think, is to remove that. I think the players are very comfortable at Wembley now. They feel like it's their home ground and all those demons have gone. So, playing at so many games at home is actually going to be an advantage, and that's the first time I think I would have, you could have said that in decades, really.
Gareth said last week after the Kosovo game he did commit his future to the country, and then added the right these things can change very, very quickly, and if he has a bad tournament, then, maybe the country won't be in love with me in the same way that perhaps they are at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you can understand that,
That's just the rules of the road,
right? To Estonia or whatever, and suddenly, you're not the greatest thing since sliced bread anymore. So, I never paid too much attention to the, I can't think of an England manager that hasn't had to be dragged out there by ankles, basically. It's once you've got the job, you want to stay in the job, really. So. I never think about Gareth's future in that sort of respect, I totally agree with everyone around the table that we've got a chance. I've been saying this for ages. We should be more confident. We go around apologising all the time, you know, if anyone's in the least bit optimistic. Just because you think you could win something, you could win it. Doesn't mean you're saying you're going to win it. Doesn't mean you're saying everyone else is useless. There's a lot of good teams in Europe, but we're one of them. And we're quick. And that's, you know, when it goes wrong with England, when there's a performance that Southgate is clearly unhappy with and everyone is unhappy with it, it's when we go back to that sort of quite ponderous, or, you know, slow. But at the moment, we can go front to back so quickly. We get in that last third, we're like lightning. That's going to frighten the life out of people. Now, the defence...
And there are options off the bench as well.
And there's options off the bench, and they're all quick as well. Now, the defence notwithstanding, the defence is a problem. But if you've got fast strike... I mean, you look at Manchester United at the moment. If Martial and Rashford are playing at the top of their game, that part of the team will frighten the life out of everybody. That's what's happening at Arsenal. The rest of it is not too clever, but the two fellas up front will frighten the life out of you because they're quick.
But it's the same at City and Liverpool. People say if they've got a weakness, it's in defence. But when you've got such attacking force as they have, you can probably outscore most opposition.
Absolutely.
You know, and you will, obviously. England's problem is, I think, is in the turnover of possession when they get caught forward. But I think you live with that for the joy of having the attacking football that we've got.
I totally agree.
Gareth has got this idea of constantly refreshing his squad. Based on what we saw yesterday at the London Stadium, do the likes of Dele Alli and Eric Dier, if they recapture their form, so I'm not basing it on one game, of course not, Paul, but if they do recapture their form, do those guys win their place back in this squad? Or as the team moved on, is the evolution of the squad, does that mean that Southgate has moved on with different players?
Well, Dele Alli's fallen a long way off it, in my opinion. He's got a long way to come back. You know, there are central midfield players who are much better and consistently better than him at the moment. So he's going to have to put that performance yesterday and repeat it, you know, over many, many weeks and months to give himself a chance of getting back in. Because, you know, at the moment, my midfield three would probably be, you know, Winks, Henderson, and maybe Oxlade-Chamberlain. Dele Alli played in the number 10 position mostly yesterday. England don't really play with a number 10 at the moment, so that's a problem for him. So does he play on the left or the right? Possibly. Eric Dier, I think, as I said earlier, I think he's got to go back to being a centre-back because there's no way he gets in the starting 11 ahead of Henderson or Winks, in my book.
It's interesting, because we look at the centre-half position and the defence position and think, oh, you know, this is where we need to sort ourselves out. But then you've got a couple of players there, like Eric Dier, that could, in time, be converted to play. You know, when you think that Kyle Walker was converted to a temporary centre half for a tournament, you've got Eric Dier, you've got Declan Rice, who a lot of people in the game will say he will eventually end up playing at centre half. He will be a centre half that can step out rather than a central defender, rather than a central midfield player that steps back. So there is the potential that situation can change as well in the next 6 months or so. So there are options. I mean, the kid at Chelsea is a huge option as well. You know,
Mount.
No, the defender.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But I think the good thing about Gareth is that, you know, none of those England players who've performed in this qualifying group can, well, apart from one or two of them, obviously the captain, will be thinking, I'm nailed on for next summer, because I think he's already shown with his treatment of Kyle Walker, he's quite willing to go for other players. If you're not,
Jesse Lingard
and Jesse Lingard, and Dele Alli, if you're not performing, forget it, you're not in.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting times ahead for the national team. Of course, qualifying last weekend for Euro 2020. OK, back to the Premier League next. Big game at Bramwell Lane this afternoon. It's Sheffield United against Manchester United. More on that game coming next. Welcome back. Big game at Bramwell Lane this afternoon. Sheffield United against Manchester United. I'll be heading up there straight after the show. Steve, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer talking in the papers this morning. He's talking about, he's asked about January transfer window, which of course is only a few weeks away. But it seems to me there's an acceptance that he may not be able to get the players, or United won't be able to get the players that they might necessarily want or might necessarily have targeted, and might be happy with some loan signings. Is he happy with the squad that he's got, though, at the moment?
Listen, I think he is at the moment because he's got Rashford and Martial fit. If there's a problem with one of those two, like Martial was out for 7 weeks earlier in the season, then it proved a major problem because they let Lukaku go, obviously, to Inter Milan. Right at the death, didn't replace him. So they knew that was a gamble, but it was a gamble they were prepared to take, manager and Ed Woodward as well. If they can get a striker in on loan, and it will only be on loan in January, they will do that. But I think the way that United have kind of settled down a bit the last few weeks, I think there's less urgency to go and do something in the January window than maybe there was when Martial was out and the team was struggling. I think everyone can see that front three of Rashford, Martial and Daniel James, pretty much like Liverpool, if they get Mane, Firmino and Salah on the pitch, then they've got a chance in any game. And I think that's the same with United. If they can keep those three players fit, more or less sort of for most of the season, they'll be OK, and then they will do their business. There is money to spend in January, but I think they're already planning for a big hit in the summer. Yeah,
they've turned things around a little bit because I think the probably low point was Newcastle away. Yeah, when they lost there, and
I mean, there's still some bumps in the road. I mean, obviously they lost at Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago after having 2 or 3 good away wins on the trot, having not won since March when they beat PSG. Today is a really difficult test at Sheffield United. I mean, that you would almost say that. I spent some time with Chris Wilder this week. Went over to do a piece with him, and what a great guy he's doing. What a great job he's doing. But they know probably that United will be vulnerable today. You know, they've not got Scott McTominay, who's emerging as kind of a mainstay of that midfield. Pogba's still out. They've got other injuries. So today will be a tough day for Man United.
Well, how do you find Chris Wilder? You spent a bit of time. You just mentioned.
Oh, I mean,
spend that time with him.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying before. You know, he's gone under the radar, and it's because his name's probly Chris Wilder, and he's from
do you know? I don't know that he has.
He's from Sheffield. He doesn't get a shout. I mean, it was interesting.
Steve, hold on. He is the LMA Manager of the Year, isn't he?
Correct, ahead of Klopp and Guardiola.
So that, to my mind, is credit.
But that's the other managers, if you know. I mean, that's not the, you know, if the LMA Manager of the Year was voted for by the chairman, you go,
the owners.
Oh, they're all noticing him. That's voted for by the other managers. I'm not saying.
It's not as though on the night we that he was there and Chris Wilder's won it, so let's move on very quickly.
No. But what I mean is, you'd expect the other managers to recognise who's doing a good job. I think within the managerial fraternity, shall we say, Chris Wilder was recognised. What you didn't see is that any Premier League club coming in and troubling Sheffield United for their manager last season, when he was clearly last season doing an absolutely fantastic job at the club. That was the point I was making. That in what might be called the old days, a team from the top division would have.
Marked him out.
Just ask yourself if Everton.
Because he's not marked. He's definitely not marked out, is he?
No.
He's not the next cab off the rank.
No, but if Everton and West Ham say part company with their managers, or even Arsenal, will Chris Wilder be in the fame for any of those jobs? I'm not sure he will be. But Harry Redknapp last week said he should have got a shout for the Spurs job. I think Harry was probably taking that a stretch, but
he's only had 13 games and he has a Premier League manager.
Yeah,
so
but his track record from where he's come from with kind of Oxford and Northampton, and it's been promotion. So he's doing something right.
If you went to see him, Steve, can you explain overlapping centre-backs to me?
We didn't actually discuss that.
I keep seeing that phrase. It's a new one on me. It's a new one on me.
Sam Wallace's piece on
Spartak Moscow.
Saturday or Friday?
Spartak Moscow used it against Blackburn in 1990, whatever. Anopko and Nishiforov used to overlap. It was incredible to watch.
Is that where Graham Lasso had his bust up David Batty?
Outside, that was in the away leg. It was already well dead for Blackburn by that stage. But at Ewood Park, the first night. First game, I can remember Ray Harford, bless him. In the press conference the day before, he was talking about getting the ball up there early and getting it up there, and they don't like it like this, and foreign teams or whatever. Everything that Ray wasn't about.
I was going to say, because he was tactically
everything that Ray wasn't about, and had dinner with him the night before the game, and I was saying to him, that stuff you're saying in a press conference, like, I said, do you really think you can get at them like that, you know, over the top? He went, no, not a chance. He said, they've got 2 centre-halves, they're like Franz Beckenbauer. He said, they're just in a different league to anything I've ever seen. And it was Onopko and Nikiforov. And overlapping centre-halves, mate.
And you remember their names as well?
I remember their names, and they both went to. They did that. I think Nikiforov went to Holland. Onopko did that thing that you see these great Russian players, and they go to some mid-table team in Spain and have these very ordinary sort of careers, and you can't quite work out why. He's an astonishing player, Victor Onopko.
Proper little hipster these days, aren't you, Marty? You watching the Libertadores last night as well?
I mean, you know, some of us, you know, we've been, you know, watching football for a very long time now.
You have indeed. You have indeed.
You have, yeah.
You're an oracle on all matters Russian Premier League.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell you the rest? Simbala was the left midfield. Fantastic player, dead now, died in his early 40s. Do you want any more hipster stuff, or are we done?
The floor's yours.
No, honestly, you carry on.
OK, we'll carry on. Let's finish off on Chris Wilder and his achievements. Could go 5th this afternoon. And the incentive is there for them to beat Manchester United. Amazing. And, you know, to have the ownership uncertainty as well. I mean, the Sheffield United just shouldn't be doing this, you know. If you look at their spend, you look at all the uncertainty about where the club's going, who's going to own it, you know, and yet they have this manager. I mean, always you can't get carried away in the first half of a season because teams get promoted and do very well before Christmas, very often struggle after Christmas, so there is that caveat, but that's there with all those clubs. And but for the time being, I think you just have to look at them and say, fabulous. And, you know, imagine thinking of Sheffield United versus Man United as a tight one, you know, even 2 years ago.
Here's a test, yeah.
Here's
a test for Manchester United.
Yeah,
Sheffield United won.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, they pushed Liverpool all the way, didn't they? It was only a mistake by Dean Henderson, who can't play today, obviously, because it's Man United's his parent club. But Liverpool only just squeezed past them there, so it's not an easy place to go.
But I thought Chris Wilder's reaction to that day was
tremendous. Because
he didn't hold back on the young kid, on the goalkeeper, and most managers would be sort of very wary of protective, and he was, you know, properly firm in his comments about it and about the mistake that had been made. And you're thinking, yeah, this guy means business. He's not just a happy traveller here. He's not, you know, they're not having a wonderful Premier League experience and then it'll all be over in 12 months' time. No. This guy's serious.
Yeah.
I read a piece by Louise Taylor on him yesterday where, you know, he gets the bus apparently. He goes to see his mates on the bus every now and again, and this is regarded as an astonishing thing that a Premier League manager can get on the bus apparently. And I was thinking, why shouldn't he get on the bus?
Yeah, exactly. Read the Michael Vaughan piece in your paper as well. That was a tremendous piece about their background together. Very interesting.
Yeah, OK. Quick predictions then? Oh, you don't do predictions, do you?
No, I never do predictions, mate.
Paul?
Sheffield.
If I could do predictions, if I could get them right, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Exactly. That's always been right.
That's how I feel about it. OK, let's move on. We have run out of time, unfortunately, but thanks to Martin for his company this morning, as well as Paul. And, of course, Steve, thanks for coming down, because you were at Man City, Chelsea last night. OK, lots of football coming your way. It's all on Sky. Don't move. OK, Middlesbrough against Hull first up this afternoon. St Johnstone against Aberdeen. And then the big one, Sheffield United against Manchester United from 4. Download the Sky Sports app. You can watch the in-game goals and the highlights on your mobile phone. Goals on Sunday follows us as ever. Cammy and Alex limbering up. They're next with Goals on Sunday. OK, don't forget you can download the podcast from all the usual places. You can catch up with the show. It's on demand. We'll see you next week, same time, same place at 10 o'clock. See you then. Bye-bye.